So nice. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to open with a prayer and jump into the service, and then we'll do a holy song at the end. And yeah, that'll be our Sunday service for today. So if everyone could please join me in prayer. Sarang Manashin Hana Umonim. We're grateful for this time today together, and sorry we got started off a little bit late, a little bit on the wrong foot. But we pray we can take this time now to realign ourselves to our vertical purpose, to be here together. We know right now from True Parents' birthday to today, which is Foundation Day, including actually tomorrow Korea time, but tonight there's really been a series of top level events, a World Summit, a think tank event this evening for us, as well as the celebration of True Parents' birthday and many events around that. So we're very far from Korea, almost the exact opposite side of the world. But pray in our hearts, despite the distance, we can truly be supporting our true parents, supporting the hard work of all our brothers and sisters, working to really change the way of thinking on a global level, really bringing together the various leaders of this world in different fields, religious and academic and financial. Because ultimately, if we want to solve the problems of this world, we do need everyone from the top to the bottom. And we in our own lives are struggling to achieve tribal messiahship, to establish the Chambo standard of being able to have a grassroots impact in our local areas. And at the same time, true parents are really trying to shift the global environment and the global way of thinking about peace, about different areas of the world. Especially with the focus now in the North Korean and South Korean issue. So as we talk today and we try to understand your heart more deeply and connect with each other as brothers and sisters, I pray we can remember the full context of the providence, the full context of True Parents' heart, not just to try to improve and educate and raise up our own families and our own lives, but really including every single situation in the world, every single country, every single village, every single family and individual. And pray we can always remember that end goal and keep it in mind as we move forward. So grateful for this time together today. Pray that your presence can be with us as we eagerly try to connect with your heart and your purpose. And report these things in our names here, in the name of Youngil and Vicky Loew, a Blessed Central family. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And like I mentioned, I'll jump into my service for today. But as I mentioned in the prayer, it's kind of from the global providence, it's a very important time, a unique time every year. And before the coronavirus, actually right before the coronavirus, I think we held one of our most impressive world summits to date. And even our own former Taoiseach in Ireland and his spouse were able to go there. And you had quite a high range of kind of global leaders, right? And I genuinely thought that, because of the coronavirus, it would significantly slow down that work. And yet somehow I feel like True Mother, and, I have to give a lot of credit to probably the staff in Korea, and actually probably just to the Korean people themselves, because a lot of that was kind of new, innovative tech. They somehow, through these kind of world think tanks and peace events, were able to keep up the momentum. And so I'm always quite impressed to see that even in kind of a more digital space, we're still building that kind of consensus across nations and fields and bringing in kind of some of the top level people, right? And, for just a simple example is, you had the World Summit and the people there, And yet through the digital versions, we had Trump come. And I know for some people that might be a negative more than a positive, depending on your view. But the point is that we're not trying to frame it as positive or negative. We're trying to frame it as we need everyone. We need the highest levels from society to start talking to each other and start thinking of things from a God-centered perspective. But I say that to kind of give the context of the time. We celebrated True Parents' birthday, and there's just been kind of a series of events going on in Korea, and that can often feel kind of very separated from our day-to-day. If I'm honest, I've been busy with work and busy with kids, and the events are late at night, so I haven't yet watched any of those events, right? But I know they're going on, and I try to pray for them. I want them to be very successful. I'm very inspired by them, even just watching some short clips or reading through the list of guests. But what I wanted to talk today in that context was actually very specifically about the meaning of true parents, right? And in the kind of holy table service, I kind of said a few words and some thoughts, and I kind of gave the foreshadowing that it would turn into a service. And so this is that kind of service, right? Because coming up to True Parents' birthday, but also kind of as a constant element of our faith, we often think, what does it mean, this term true parents, right? And it's actually such a common term in our own faith that it just feels natural, right? We say it a lot, we hear it a lot. It's kind of the core part of our faith. But when you take a step back from it, if you think of it from a purely objective perspective, it is a little bit of a strange term, right? If you heard true parents for the first time, and maybe the first gen have some experience with that, where the first time they heard the term true parents, how they digested that and how they thought of it. But it does, in the way the current world is and in English, bring up this kind of contrast, right? Oh, well, if true parents, why do we use the term true parents? Well, that implies that because there are false parents, right? And so then again, if you think of it kind of separated from our whole culture and the principle, and if you were just looking on the outside, you'd be like, well, are you trying to say that all the other parents are false, right? And this is definitely the kind of strategy the media used in the 70s, the 80s, and it was really like very clearly driving a wedge between families, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because already a lot of families were upset that their children joined the church. And then the media kind of added this like element of, oh yeah, the church is saying that they don't need their parents, right? That their parents are false parents. And that's why they're following the true parents. And they kind of position true parents as like a replacement for their parents. And of course, then a lot of kids didn't want to talk to their parents because their parents didn't want them to do what they were doing, and so it kind of became like a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. But for me personally, hearing the testimony of my own parents, I could never really buy that kind of positioning of the early days of the church, that the church tried to keep kids from their parents. Because one thing is, my mom went home quite regularly, like had a good relationship with her parents. They didn't really pressure her, give her a hard time, until she tried to get married, and that was a different story. But up until that point, they were supportive and they trusted her. And then she would go home a couple times a year, even though she was kind of full-time mission. And my dad, he was saying that his mom refused to visit him. So obviously to visit him when he was in the church, right? Refused to come visit him. Except one time he ended up in the hospital and she was worried the church would like kill him or something, right? So it just shows like the way, the culture of that time and the kind of almost paranoia of that time caused a real wedge in parents. And one thing that really highlighted that to me is I was looking up old articles. I was just curious what the press was saying about my parents' blessing. So I looked up like the archives of 1982 Madison Square Garden, right? I was actually looking for pictures, but all I could really find were articles, right? And the articles were fascinating because it was like the reporters went in and just talked to parents, right? And all the parents were like yeah, we were invited to come to this thing. My husband wouldn't come or this relative wouldn't come, but I had to come because, it's my child getting married, even though I don't agree with it. I don't understand what's going on. And so it was really clear to me that all the parents were invited, obviously, to the blessing, right? And they were asked to come to the blessing. And a lot of them just kind of refused, right? Because, or they just were really conflicted about it, mostly because they didn't really understand what we were claiming with the blessing. Um, so, but it was very much this idea of two parents was positioned as like replacement to your parents. And, you know, it, and it's in a way, it almost makes sense because if you say there's true parents and false parents, then who are the false parents, right? And you're like, oh, well, are my parents false parents? So I was thinking for second gen, it's a lot different though, because there isn't that conflict between the parents. My parents also follow true parents. So I don't think that it's like one or the other. It's not a conflict. It's not a competition, right? I can support and love my own parents while I'm following true parents because we're kind of, that doesn't create tension. That's almost like the natural direction to go in. So, but it does kind of come back to, well, what does true parents mean then, right? As in this realm of parents. And I'm not going to give a definitive answer because I think that's actually a very personal question for each person, right? The how you see true parents is kind of a cornerstone of every person's faith. It's a very personal question. There's, everyone will probably give a slightly different answer. But I think there is some truth in this idea of of the contrast, right? The true, why do we say true parents? And, in the principle explains, well, true is kind of this idea of perfect versus the imperfect parents because we were raised under Satan's dominion and Satan's realm. And, as a parent myself, I think it's very obvious that I'm an imperfect parent, right? And I think parents in general, they're always blaming themselves and second guessing themselves. And except for James, he's on the perfect parent track there. So yeah. Oh wait, sorry, we got a veto over here from Brendan. So just for those on Zoom, so they knew who was vetoing James's claims there. But so I was thinking about that a lot because obviously my parents were also imperfect parents. So should I be seeing true parents as like my perfect parents, as like the model for my imperfect parents, right? And is that also how I should myself try to model myself as a parent? And so I was thinking, so what would true parents do differently compared to what my parents were doing? Or what should I do differently compared to what true parents are doing? And always and this is kind of how I've viewed true parents in the past, like true parents are like the model and that we should try to model ourselves after. Well, then what is that model? And I've tried to pray about this a lot and think about it a lot. And the 2 points that always kind of jumped out to me about true parents being parents is one, the idea that they did mission as a couple. And growing up, my age of second gen, there were a lot of both my age and slightly older second gen who would have been, relatively close in age, 1 or 2 years older, would be all the blessings before my parents' blessings. A lot of them had situations where one parent was doing mission and that parent was never home, right? Or would come home twice a year. And it was really it was incredibly destructive, right? To both the relationship of the husband and wife and the impact it had on the kids. And especially because I grew up kind of in a dormitory of second gen, I could hear these stories in a very kind of personal way, and it kind of always bothered me. So I kind of contrasted that to the way true parents did mission, and I always felt, well, true parents always did mission as a couple, right? So that was like, okay, that's something to keep in mind and remember, right?
Yeah, but the kids.
The other thing about true parents' lifestyle is they do mission as a couple, and then they're always doing mission. It's always a public lifestyle. It's always with the members. It's always with other people. And that's the hardest part, I think, of what true parents do. And I've always thought about this point. Those 2 points have always
Hello?
been in the back of my mind, and something I
They
struggle
didn't
with
hear
also
me,
as
did
a
they?
parent now, but also like how much
Right.
can you actually do mission and take care of
Anyway,
your
James is going to come
kids,
in
right?
at
And
2,
take
but
care
I
of your
wouldn't want
family.
Mary to be
And I
here. So.
realize that actually thinking this way is still thinking in the same
No, I'd say she'll
way of
drop
thinking of
and
true
go.
parents,
It's
almost
coming
like
to, if I'll ring him
replacement
close
parents,
to the time if
right?
he's here.
Like, oh, if true parents were my parents, this is what my parents would do. Or if I was true parents,
It's
this is
only,
what I should do,
yeah,
right? And I felt like actually
yeah. I'm
that's
going to
not
make
really what true
lunch or
parents
dinner
mean,
early now.
right? And
Going
I
to make
kind of felt like
like a dinner
thinking in
Sunday.
this way is still thinking like, okay, my parents aren't good enough, and then true parents is like who should really be my parents almost, right? It's still almost using the same thinking that the media did in the 70s, right? Yeah.
No, just a quick. Also, in true parents' family, that style is also destructive as well. Huh?
Well, that's the point I'm getting to, right? That's always been my struggle with it, right? Because the argument in the past is, well, it was well, true parents' family includes everybody, and so it's all our members, right? But it was directly destructive to their own children, right? And so that's what I'm saying is what I feel is, or what I realized when I was preparing for the Holy Day, is actually the term true parents isn't about being the parents of your family. It's more about that mission and that title, right? And again, I'm getting more into my own definition of what true parents mean. And something just to reflect on and think about is really what true parents is a position. It's the position of the restored Adam and Eve. It's the position of representing God as a parent, right? And to me, the defining theory of the unification movement is true parentism, right? Like if you had to describe everything that the church believes and teaches in one word, it's the idea that parents are central, the parents are core, that God's relationship with people is as a parent to a child, right? That the purpose of history is to restore the parental position, right? And so to me, what I think became very clear in this kind of process of prayer and reflection is that the meaning of true parents is literally this evolution of the meaning of Messiah, right? That the real limitation of the current view of Messiah is that it's one man come to save us all, right? Where in reality, it's a parent, a man and a woman, struggling to teach us and educate us and guide us the way parents do, right? And and so it's not the model for parenting, right? It's not the ideal model of how parents should be with their kids, because in an ideal world, of course the parents have to take care of their own children, right? Of course there's no centralized one set of parents that everyone has to be dependent on, right? Of course, the only way parenting works is if parents are their own family units and they take care of each other and then support each other, right? It has to be a very kind of localized, grassroots, natural development, right? And this is, even the principle describes this as like individual, family, tribe, society, nation, right? That it's not a top-down approach, but a bottom-up approach, right? And so everything that true parents do, if we see it as oh, this is how people should be parents, then you get this situation where, well, then you're not taking care of, you're not being a model parent for your own kids, right? It's much more the position of restoration. And one of my favorite quotes from True Father, and unfortunately I didn't write it down and I don't know where it is. So if anyone finds it, please send it to me, because I've searched on like unification.net or whatever. But where True Father is saying, me and mother shouldn't be the only true parents. And I know I've quoted this many times, but all of you should become true parents. And
we've heard that many times.
yes, yeah. So I just have to find where it's written, right? Because I like to have the source material, right? You know, because then it's just rumors. Someone made it up and attributed it to Father, right? but I read it. I remember visibly reading it and being, oh, that's a really nice quote, but I can't find where it was written. So, but the point is, with that quote, is if everyone's true parents, it's kind of like the Incredibles quote, right? Then you don't need the term true anymore. Then everyone's just parents, right? And then the scale of that mission finally comes down to the level of what it was naturally supposed to be, which is your own family, right? If every parent really loves and cares for their own family, there's no need for this 100% public lifestyle away from your family. Your 100% public lifestyle will always be with your family, right? Because that's what everyone else is doing. So there's no gap in love that has to be filled. There's no providence of restoration that still needs to be accomplished, right? And so for me, this was, and maybe it's an obvious realization, but for me, it was a very kind of inspiring realization that I wanted to share, is that title, True Parents, is really a title that is the evolution of the kind of term Messiah, right? It's kind of the next step in people's understanding of restoration. But the role of true parents isn't the ideal role of a parent, right? It's really that position and that mission on like a global scale, right? And that's why Mother is working on a global scale, right? She's trying to get these leaders to meet together and be like, look, it's really obvious, but war is bad, right? Division is bad, right? Starving your people is bad. So how do we look past all the excuses and just stop doing these things, right? That's kind of my interpretation of the purpose of all these events is, you know, people make excuses. They make excuses for damaging the environment. They make excuses for going to war. They make excuses for oppressing their people. And they always think it's a good excuse. And there are probably elements of their excuse that have some value, but the end result has been terrible, right? And we need to like build a new way of doing things. But the other side of it, what Mother asks of us to do, is to be focused on our local communities, right? To become Chunbo victors is the Tribal Messiah mission. And none of it is new, right? Father was talking about home church and tribal messiahship from the 80s, at least, right? You know, like it's your neighborhood, it's your family, it's your community, it's your neighborhood that you really should be the messiahs for, right? So it's, yeah, so the last point I wanted to make, in case people were wondering what happened to God's Day, because I was very confused in the beginning of the year, because February 1st is the Lunar New Year, which used to be God's Day. And I was like, oh, it's not on the calendar. Where did it go, right? But then I remembered, because I asked David Ham, like, what happened with God's Day? Like, come on, did it just disappear? Are we not doing it anymore? And then before he responded, I remember, actually last year, Mother combined God's Day and True Parents' Day and the anniversary of the Holy Wedding, right? And I just think it's very, very relevant to this idea of parentism, and that our church is really about becoming parents and the importance of being a good parent and building a strong family. So the Holy Wedding is basically this time stamp in history when True Father and True Mother became true parents, right? And that's also then God's Day is honoring God as a parent, right? And it got turned to Heavenly Parents' Day in English, which is a bit of a mouthful, right? And then, of course, True Parents' Day. And because we added true to all the holy days, people forget that True Parents' Day isn't about true parents. That's True Parents' birthday and the celebration on there. But True Parents' Day is really about all parents being true, right? And being true parents. So I think really that when I first heard it, it really made a lot of sense to me, and somehow I forgot it. And then when I remembered it, I was like, yeah, we're putting all the parental levels of days into one day that we can celebrate. It's also more practical because we were getting annoyed with having to not celebrate on solar New Year, but then celebrating on New Year. But then we had like 3 holidays in a row in 2 weeks. So I kind of like now that they're all together kind of in the middle of the year. They'll overlap with Easter sometimes. So we might even have time off, right? So yeah, so it's the conclusion is, this is something I've been praying about and reflecting on. Being a parent is hard work. For those of you who haven't done it yet, it's really one of the hardest jobs you have. For those that know, you can back me up on that. And it's always been a part of my faith, trying to balance this mission and this kind of responsibility from coming from two parents with the kind of everyday challenge of being a parent and trying to make sure your kids are fed and taken care of and don't get too sick and don't keep running into walls and all this stuff, right? So it's and that's the age they're at now. I know that just changes every year, and then you don't want them, getting in trouble at school and yeah. Yeah, yeah. So so it's just I wanted to share that reflection about true parents, especially at this time. I think it's very relevant. Hopefully it's somewhat useful in your own understanding and growth in understanding of your relationship with true parents. But yeah, ultimately, again, that's something that's very personal for every person. And I don't think anyone can really dictate your view or understanding of true parents, but I think it's always helpful to hear from other people and to share. And I'm always grateful to hear other people's views of true parents and their experiences as parents, and their experiences with true parents. And so I just wanted to share that today. I thought it was also topical considering everything that's going on. So on that note, I will close with a prayer. If everyone could join me. Saramanashin Hanal Pumanim. Our dear, beloved, and precious Heavenly Parent, as always, we're so grateful for the lives we have because they're actually quite good lives, especially if we compare to most of history and to most other parts of this world. We really have a lot of blessings, a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities to not just live to survive, but really to live with meaning and with purpose, to live so that we can understand the deepest values in this universe and the real purpose of our lives. So I know every person here today, every person listening on Zoom has a completely different life, background, relationships. But I pray as we come here together every week, at least for each other, we can be a source of strength and support, a source of community, not in a kind of vague sense or it's nice sometimes sense, but in the real sense that we can trust each other, that we can rely on each other. And we know that if things get very difficult, there's a group of people that will take us in, that will care for us, that will love us as part of their family, as part of their extended family. So we know, at least I know, we're so grateful, so lucky to have such people in our lives. And I just pray as each week goes on, each day goes on, as more people become connected, as more children are born, as life moves forward, that those bonds can become stronger and include more people throughout the world, but especially here in Ireland, in our own backyard. We can really build up our presence and our ability to really touch the hearts of our brothers and sisters of Ireland. So in conclusion, I just pray that all of us can have a great week until we meet again, and that we can really start to live and feel as you originally intended in the Garden of Eden, as children of God, full of love and purpose and direction. I offer this report in our names here, in the name of Yangil and Vicky Loew, Blessed Central Family. Okay, so Rory, you have a holy song prepared? All right, so we'll close with a holy song. I don't know which one Rory picked, so I hope it's a good one. And then and then we'll close off the service with a couple announcements. Poor Jesus, even his song, no one, like, he can't get a break.
Have you ever read? No one has ever sung that song.
I'm sure someone has. I'm sure in Korea. It's one of those, like, if we're doing, so in Korea, sometimes when I was growing up, they would do, like, especially for God's Day, they would do like overnight prayer visuals, even for the middle schoolers, right? Yeah, so that, oh yeah. So that sounds like the perfect song for like a all night visual, right? Oh, jeez. Are we ready? All right, Rory. Okay, good. Classic. Love the classics. Hopefully everyone can hear it. I know it's coming. Well, if they can hear it, we'll silent. Rory, if they can hear it, let's not interrupt and let them hear it. We'll be silent and meditate. You finished there? Okay, for some reason we're getting an echo. We'll give it a second. Sorry guys on the call, we couldn't hear it here, so we didn't want to interrupt your experience, so we were meditating on our side. Again, I know I keep saying we'll try to resolve these technical issues, but it's going to take a bit of time, so apologies for that. So for announcements, like I said, there's been a series of events. I know some people were probably up late last night watching the Foundation Day event. Everyone can hear me okay, Rory? On the call? Okay, great. And also there's another one tonight, so a think tank event. So the think tank events, again, they're about focus on the Korean Peninsula. They get quite a few, actually very high level speakers. I listened to one of them, very impressed. You have Ban Ki-moon, I think, on the one tonight, the former UN secretary, as well as one of the, I always forget her name, the pastor, Laura White, I think. Is that right, guys? Someone can correct me. Huh?
Ken White or White Ken, Paula White Ken.
Paula White, yes, thank you.
Paula White Ken.
Kane, okay, very good.
Don't forget Ken.
But
She's introduced as Paula White.
she's always been introduced as Paula White, yeah.
I've heard her introduced as Paula White Ken.
Okay, cool. But anyway, she's a great speaker. And she's the pastor. I think she was a spiritual advisor for Trump. But aside from that, she's also just a very good speaker. She makes very clear points, and she has a really kind of solid way of kind of framing the situation. And for whatever reason, she's quite inspired about speaking about the North Korean issue. And it's very healthy conversations, right? Even though it's kind of translated, some of it's translated from Korean, and then she responds to a Korean question and stuff. But some of these forums have been just really fascinating to listen to, because it's, I don't know if she's, I'm not sure. That would be interesting, because I follow Yeonmi Park. Oh, I was wondering what she would think of it, because I follow her on YouTube, actually. She's a North Korean survivor. She wrote a very famous book. Yeah, really kind of tragic story, but she ended up, actually, she recently became a US citizen. She has a YouTube channel. She talks about all these different things happening in North Korea. And really like kind of detailed, like she's trying to get really detailed information from sources around, you know, Kim Jong-un's health, and some of the things that, yeah, exactly, recently. So yeah, I've kind of been on a North Korean reading series. So I read her book, and then I read this kind of fake autobiography of Kim Jong-il. But it was really good, because it was actually really well written, because the author got a lot of the source material from North Korea. So he wrote it almost as if he was like the Kim Jong, like it wasn't like mocking, it almost like was believable that this is how Kim Jong-un would write his autobiography, right? It was kind of like, it mentioned the actual events that he was responsible for trying to bring some conclusion to, but it obviously gave the North Korean spin to those events. And it's kind of like, I'm good at everything, I solved all the problems in the country, right? Like this kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. So very well written. I'd recommend it, although it is a bit long. And then I'm reading another one now, which is again like personal testimonies of journalists who interviewed these people who escaped from North Korea, but really written as like their daily lives, like what their day-to-day life.
I am in the 13th.
Really fascinating.
It's already gone. Eli,
Yeah.
I
I'm
think the one you're talking about
was last night.
We watched it till 4:15.
The think tank was last night.
Yeah, that's the 13th.
The 13th in Korea was 12 o'clock midnight.
Oh, sorry, that was the last night one. Sorry, guys, my mistake.
So I registered, and that's the last one. We finished.
Oh, okay, my mistake. I've got my wires crossed. Huh? That was a couple of days ago. All right, well then watch the recap, guys. Everything I just said, now you don't have to stay up late tonight. Yeah, no, don't forget about it. Just go watch the recap tonight then. It was last night. Yeah, sorry. Tonight is the Super Bowl, so that's what people can watch. Yeah, exactly. Don't want people watching the think tank when they could be watching the Super Bowl. So is he going to do that? Oh, geez. Okay. I don't know. But yeah, so then the other thing is next week, home church service. I put this in the email, but I do want to do like those Hundoke sessions. I think they're just nice. So if people don't have a plan for home church, I'll set up the Zoom call. People can sleep in a bit. We'll start at 12. Yeah, just so it's not.
I think there is plans for a second gen thing.
Yeah, great. That'll be good. Yeah, I know Vittorio told me that he wanted to use the home church service to try to get the second gen together and just spend some time together. So hopefully no one gets sick this time. And then, like I said, next week, Vittorio and me will give the service, but we want to do we're trying to plan just a little kind of official appointment ceremony for their new position, right? 2 weeks time. Yeah. Yeah. So that's And then the other thing is I was asking for volunteers for lunch because so far just me and Rose are kind of on the rota. So we have 1 or 2 gaps there we're trying to fill. So because I don't think me and Rose really want to do it twice a month. And I don't think they want to eat my food twice a month. So yeah, exactly. Huh? Once a month, yeah. We can almost pass. Try to stretch it out to once every 6 weeks, right, James? If people start having heart attacks, I'll never forgive myself. All right, guys. So on that note, I think that covers our announcements. Again, great to see everyone. Thanks for joining. Oh yeah, sorry. We do have a guest from Wales. So maybe Alex, if you just want to pop up, give everyone put you on the spot, but I think you're expecting it.
Yeah.
Tell people what you're doing here, why you're here, how long you're going to be here.
So I come to visit Dublin. It's nearby. It's an hour's flight from Wales, and it's beautiful the county country as well so far, and great people. And I've come to meet a friend from university, but also to see the community. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I'm flying back tonight, so it's just a weekend
All right.
experience. So
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. All right, everyone. Have a great week. It's great to see you. And I'll see you over Zoom next week and hopefully in person the week after that. So take care of yourselves and God bless.